Okay, perfect. So one of the reasons we have the panelists here is that everyone who's on this panel has had experience going through in some sort of organizing campaign that really almost boiled over or did boil over into a strike. And we want to share that experience with a lot of the people in here to talk about what that is, what it's like to build towards that moment of labor militancy, and how do we get there as South Floridians? So I think we can first open it to here to talk about their experiences, and then turn it over to Colin and then Lisa as well.
That'll be great. So I think we'll start with just everybody can tell us a little bit of their story, everything you feel comfortable sharing about, but I think we want to talk about the things that we've done recently that have been militant in our unions, and UniteHere just had two really big contract negotiations, and we almost went on strike. We were preparing for a very real threat to strike here in South Florida. So I think we'll open up with that. So we're talking to Lizzie, and do you want to start up?
Hi, my name's Lizzie. I work at the Fontainebleau. I've been working there for almost 2 years. I work in the kitchen. I'm 23 years old. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. My name is Antoinette Clerizier, and I'm working in Diplomat for 20 years, housekeeping.
Okay. And Rose, tell us a little bit about the fight at the Diplomat and the Fontainebleau, and if you can tell us a little bit about like how we escalated that campaign, and then what it led up to.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to UniteHere Local 355. My name is Rose Dennis. I am the president of the local. Also, I lead the internal program here at the local. Last year, we made a decision to really fight the two hotels here that we were in the middle of contract negotiations with them. Was the Diplomat Hotel and the Fontainebleau Hotel. And also, I would like to talk a little bit about the local. We represent the hospitality workers in South Florida. It was pre-pandemic about 7,000 workers. We represent stadium workers and catering workers. People put food inside the airplane, hotel workers, and airport workers, both airports, Miami and Fort Lauderdale airports, and also the casino workers. And then, last year was an interesting year for us because the inflation started after the pandemic. We made a decision that we have to have our workers who have more money in their pockets, because pre-pandemic, people didn't think about things like that will happen, and it happened. People was living without nothing in their pockets, meaning people didn't have savings, didn't have anything, and we have to do some like food drives, everything to help our workers. And when we made the decision, we have to really build up from the committee, and then in the both places quickly, from Fontainebleau, which is about 900 workers, and Diplomat was about 500 workers there, to build up a strong committee. And then when I said committee, a committee can cover every part of the hotel, the both hotels, and then to start having conversation on the both places, and to talk about what at stake, what is gonna take, in order to win a good contract. And the fight was about, starting from building the committee, having a delegation to management, escalate from delegation to management to having cafeteria rallies, from cafeteria rallies to have cafeteria in front of, to have rallies in front of the hotels, one of the hotels, sorry, Diplomat, and cafeteria rally in front of Fontainebleau, that Lizzie was part of it, and Antoinette led cafeteria rallies with most of the housekeepers at the Diplomat Hotel. And at the end, we won, and the both places that we won $20 for the back of the house. It was really an interesting and scary fight, because when you have to go to people's house to talk to them, what is gonna take them to win a fight like that is no way you can say, you know, having to do one action is gonna be enough. You have to be, you know, talking to people about losing paycheck, meaning striking for a day. It can be for one day, it can be for days, you know, is not an easy conversation to have. And then escalate those actions that I just talking about, and the both companies came in the middle of the fight.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that introduction into some of how that went. Colin, can I ask you about, you know, just give us some background about the fight at Madison, Wisconsin, what it was like to, you know, go through that, some of the background of what you're facing with losing and then regaining that union, hopefully.
Sure, thanks, and thanks for having me. My name is Colin, he, him. So I work as a nurse at UW Hospital in Madison, Wisconsin, and our union faces what may be the most complicated and boring legal and political obstacles in the entire country. So I'm going to try to keep my explanation of where we're at as brief as possible. Anybody who wants to like really geek out on it, I'm happy to talk after this meeting. In short, UW Health had a union. It was SEIU Healthcare Wisconsin. That union evaporated in 2014 following Scott Walker's Act 10. Scott Walker wanted to be president of the United States. He now is not president, and hopefully will undo everything he accomplished in his 2 terms as governor here in Wisconsin. But easier said than done. His Act 10 severely restricted the collective bargaining rights of public sector unions. And UW Health is a public authority. It actually split from, it's one of those hybrid institutions where the employees have state benefits, but the institution itself has fiscal autonomy from the state. So it doesn't get revenue from the state, like doesn't get like money from the state government. It can make its own decisions, but we do have access to the benefits. Because of our unclear status, when we became a public authority back in the 90s, they added us into the definition of, or they added the hospital into the definition of employer in our state labor laws. And Act 10 deletes us from, like we're the one entity named, but we're not even named in Act 10. We're just deleted. And so after we were deleted from state labor laws, SEIU evaporated in 2014. I think I wasn't there. I think the sense was that there was no way forward given the political landscape. In 2019, after our Democratic governor took office, nurses were really pissed off at all the stuff that we'd lost since we lost the contract. And we started to organize basically through a loophole in Act 10 in the hopes of winning our union back. And we were demanding voluntary recognition from our employer because we couldn't really use the levers available to us through the state or the national labor laws, which would have forced an election and so on. So we were demanding voluntary recognition, and our hospital claimed that they couldn't do anything, like that they couldn't, their hands were tied by Act 10. which of course was a little disingenuous. They clearly didn't want to do anything. They just wanted to use that as an excuse. So we threatened to go on strike, and it would have been a minority strike for recognition, which on the spice level, like of strikes, is pretty high. And leading up to the strike, you know, we didn't have like a formal union with members. We asked people to sign a strike pledge, and we ultimately got up to around 800, but the total number of employees in our unit is closer to like, it's that high 2000, it's like 2,700, 2,800. So it would still have been a minority strike. And because we didn't have, because it wasn't clear whether the state or the national labor boards had jurisdiction, our employer was saying things like, you know, all policies apply. So if you don't come to work and you're scheduled to work, the attendance policy applies. And the attendance policy for nurses is pretty strict. We can't have nurses not just show, like, it's not a good thing when nurses don't show up to work because they're keeping people alive. That honestly like motivated people. It scared a lot of people, but it also motivated people. We ultimately, like, we didn't go on strike. Our strike threat sort of built to a boil, and then we, as we kind of hoped would happen, our governor intervened because it was an election year, and he wanted to mediate a settlement, and the settlement we ended up with is not voluntary recognition that includes collective bargaining, because they were still concerned that, or that they claimed to be concerned that was illegal. We do have something essentially like meet and confer, where we can have meetings that result in non-binding agreements with the administration. And we only signed away our right to strike for voluntary recognition. And I don't think that our administration recognizes that leaves a whole wide range of reasons to strike. And we haven't really brought it up with them yet, but since we almost went on strike, we've really been preoccupied with building our membership so that we're in a good position to launch a potential strike threat or other kind of labor action, and fighting off like clear and present dangers in the form of other Republican elected officials who were up for election. So we could have lost our governor in last fall, but we retained our governor. And then we just had this famously expensive Supreme Court race where Judge Janet Protasiewicz won and tipped the balance of power in the Supreme Court to the liberals. And hopefully that means that if Act 10 is subject to review, hopefully we'll put it up for review. They'll find it unconstitutional. When it was reviewed before by the Supreme Court, it was a 5-4 decision, conservative to liberal. Anyway, I mean, just in terms of lessons, I understand you all in Florida are facing Act 10-like legislation. That, excuse my French, that shit sucks. Like, it's like we've been operating under the shadow of Act 10, and it's like, it's really hard. I know you're not facing exactly the same stuff. I was reading up about it a little bit. Like, it actually seems like worse than Act 10, in the sense that like the public sector unions we have like don't have to meet a threshold to recertify. The thing is, like, when you lose dues check and you can only the public sector unions can only negotiate for cost of living adjustment, which last year was pretty important and like nobody got, right? But like previously it was kind of like all people negotiated about with any success was benefits and policy. And that went away, and you know, people were like, they felt hopeless, and so even people who were like nominally pro-union sort of trickled away. And so like the TAA, the Graduate Worker Union at University of Wisconsin-Madison, they were the first in the country to get like recognized as a public sector grad student union. And they led the response to Act 10. They started the occupation of the Capitol, and this is back in 2011. It sort of was a precursor of Occupy, and definitely like part of a wave of international resistance. That was the same time as Arab Spring. And like there was a Quebec student strike. There was a lot going on. That said, working under those conditions, also they made us right to work. Working under those conditions can be kind of liberating because, and this is the conversation that we're just constantly having, and it's never an easy conversation. But every time that we have it, and if we as we rebuild our union in under these conditions, the point is that like we're kind of back at 1876. You know, like this is before, you know, like the National Labor Relations Act came out in like 1935 or something, or I don't know, like it came out in the 30s, right? And that really routed all labor action into like through the National Labor Relations Board elections process and collective bargaining. When that's not an option, it really shows you that what we all always know to be the case, which is that our greatest strength is our solidarity with each other. This, like, the system won't work if we don't, right? Like, so like our employer depends on us showing up to work every day. And if we stop, it either like throws everything out of whack and nothing happens, or it costs them an enormous amount, and this is the case in healthcare, it costs them an enormous amount to get scabs. And our hospital actually, like for our 3-day strike, we got close enough that they hired scabs, because you can't just hire them the day of. You have to like contract with a strike nurse agency, who I'm pretty sure like are kind of like Dementors in the Harry Potter movies. Like they just sort of hover in the sky until they're called down to do bad things. But they spent $9 million just to contract those nurses for 3 days, and to deploy them, it would have cost them $3 million a day. Yeah. So and then they're still always telling us that they're broke. So, you know, it's same shit, different day. But anyway, there's like I said, our situation's enormously complex. I think the biggest lesson to draw from it is that you don't need the state. You don't need your employer to recognize you. You just need to act like a union. And there's something liberating about working under terrible like legal conditions, and that it forces you just to act like a union. The other big lesson was that, hey, I was a skeptic when they started talking about a minority strike for recognition. And I think that was partly because I knew a little bit more about labor than other people did, and just how unusual that is. And what surprised and delighted me was the fact that people rose to meet the occasion. So like we started with 0 strike pledges in May. We got to 800. And that's with people like who maybe in May of 2022, they didn't know what a union was. And then they were willing to like put their job on the line, put their career on the line, because they were like, well, I don't know. I didn't know what a union was yesterday, but now you're telling me that I can't have one because my employer is making up some bullshit reason. And it just seems so obvious that if like the question of whether or not we have a union as nurses should be up to the nurses. You're telling us we can't decide for ourselves? Well, screw you. I'm not going to go to work those days. So that part was fun. Yeah, anyway, I'll stop there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Colin. And I'm going to turn it over to the last panelist to introduce us, Lisa Marie Sagara, and then from there we can have people in the audience ask questions if they want.
Hi, I'm Lisa Marie. Pronouns are she, her. As mentioned, I'm from the Gizmodo Media Group Union, and we did go on strike. I will admit we are headquartered really in New York City. So very different government environment, but we do also have people, you know, not in New York, and a very aggressive and hostile management. So we have our own battles there. I think the biggest things that I want to point out are just really keeping a pulse on where everyone is at and always changing that. We did very, very frequent check-ins before we went on strike. And part of that was knowing what people care about, right? So the biggest thing we had to do was listen. What do people care about? What are people willing to strike for? So we also knew what to do, right? If we weren't getting something, was that worth it? Were our members going to be with us? If it wasn't, then that's something that maybe we can make some kind of concession on for something else they are willing to strike for. So constantly knowing what people's priorities were was absolutely crucial. And then leading up to bargaining, keeping people abreast of what's happening, all of the things that management are saying, because management is never going to just give you what you or your members want. So it's always going to be fuel to tell, you know, your members, hey, this is what they're offering you. If you want $1, they're going to give you 50 cents. And pointing that out is never going to make your members happy, right? And so telling them like how low those offers are, whatever they're giving you at the table, is so crucial in making sure that everyone is aware of, you know, what's at stake. And then knowing, you know, as you get closer, if you're still not meeting those demands, knowing, are people willing to strike? We did very, very regular check-ins with people. We knew basically everyone, what their temperature check was. We kept track of how many people we knew, and that was just the most important thing. And the other thing too, you mentioned, you know, money, it's very scary. We also led up to the, like, I'm talking months before we even had contract negotiations open up. We were having conversations about striking. We knew what our management was like. We knew that they were very aggressive and very anti-union. So before that, we already did a temperature check. Would there be any scenario in which you were possibly willing to strike, right? Just to say, like, what are people's thoughts? And it wasn't binding. It was just to know where people were at. And we also said to people, and we were honest, put away any money you can. And, you know, working in New York City, we're not paid a ton, especially for a very high cost of living place. So that's really tough. But we were honest and we said anything that you can, because we don't want anything to happen. And we were also very big on telling people, if you have a hardship, we can do hardship loans at WGAE. And we were also very big on working our resources with like newspapers, news sites to get the message out so that people could also donate to our GoFundMe. It's a lot easier to keep people on strike and on the picket line because they know that there's some money coming in. Because obviously, as much as we want these things, we have to be practical. And those were really, really important, and really important for keeping that energy up so that we did eventually, you know, get what we wanted. And luckily, because we were so united, it was a short strike. And I don't know if it would have been a short if we didn't have all of that leading up to it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I think we can open now the floor up for questions. I do have a question that I want to start with. I think we're talking about you know, forming a union. We're talking about a very complex one at that. We're talking about going on strike. Here in South Florida, we had a very real threat of a strike. So I want to know, like, leading up to that, how did you guys deal with engaging coworkers who weren't engaged in the fight? Like, how did you push them to get involved in the fight and to eventually get to a place where they were ready to go on strike with you?
So for us, there were definitely some people who were either not engaged with the union, they weren't necessarily anti-union, but they were just there, you know? And then we had some people who are very pro-union, but for personal reasons, they were not keen on going on strike. You know, we had some people who were getting ready to go on parental leave, things like that, people who had sick family members. It's really tough. So what we did was, you know, we listened to their concerns because they're part of this too. We emphasize any financial aspects that they could utilize, things like that. And we also tried to lead by example, right? So we tried to use, because you always want to have leaders throughout the union. So for us, that was at the different sites, but maybe that's someone who works in the kitchen, front of the house, back of, right, whatever your groups are, you always want to try and pick out leaders so that you can have reach everywhere. And those people will lead by example. And they also, it makes them feel not alone, which is very important. It also means that they have someone that maybe they trust more because they see them every day. They work with them every day. They can go to them for, you know, questions or concerns, things like that. And so then getting them to rally, once you have that system kind of in place where you're close to them, you can actually have a conversation with them, hearing, you know, besides those financial concerns, what can you realistically do? Like I said, with the loans and fundraising, you know, what do they care about, right? Because there's no reason for them to try and get involved if you're not doing anything for them. But everyone has something that could be better. Every single person would want something to be better. And, you know, focusing in on that and just listening. Listening is the best thing that we can do as union leaders. And so really making sure that they are heard and making sure that even if they're not the loudest voice in the room, their voice is heard through you is so crucial.
Thank you so much. I think Antoinette wants to tell us about this question as well.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Antoinette, and I'm working in Diplomat Hotel from housekeeping for 20 years. And when after the pandemic, they open, but before they don't want to open because they don't want like those employees before they want to hire new people. And thank God for that because we have union and they can do that. And before they close, they ask everybody to bring uniform. That means if you bring your uniform, that means they don't want you anymore. And they close for 14 months. Even they don't care for any employee. They don't call you. They don't know if you're there because they don't want us anymore. And after 14 months, and now thank God we have union and fight. They do that rally, they go in the front. We go in for the hotel to do some stuff, and after they open. And when they open, but they treat us like, why you here? That's why they think for me, because they don't care for any person. And when they have to get like negotiation, and we go in there because they don't want us, and they often us like 10 cents, 5 cents, because like every day we go in like something like we don't want to hear that. And after that, because we going to do so many things, we going to do some stuff in the cafeteria, some stuff in the like from the HR, and it's nothing happen. And now we talking about this strike. When we start to do that, because a lot of people scared to do it, and we go and like house visit. We talking about like when people going in eat from lunch, we talking table by table. We going to lunch by group, like everybody going by group, like when you say like group, like 10 people in the table, 5 people in the table, and we talk, and some people still scared, and we keep pushing, and until that time we get 99% people vote yes to go in the tribe. And for me, that's amazing. That's a good fight for me and the diplomat. And it's not easy, but it was good too when you keep pushing people to do it, because that time in housekeeping, they don't want to give the guests a service. We ask for daily housekeeping. We ask for $20. We ask for insurance, because you know now how everything is so expensive there. That's why we talk to the people like the insurance is good for you if you sick, because how long the hotel closed, they don't care about you, your family is sick, even they don't know if you don't have insurance. How many money, you don't have money to pay the doctor, and like we have like 99% people, oh, okay, yes, good, and they vote yes. And that time when the company saw that, 99% people say yes, they don't know, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, everybody stop work, they don't want to lose money. And when they come back in the table, they say, okay, they start to talk, we want to hear. And that's why now we still stay same fight to get what you want, what we want.
I guess a follow-up, did you guys get? To that $20 goal, did you get to keep your health insurance?
Yeah, we get everything. Yes.
Okay, so
Rose, could you mute there, please?
I have a question as well. My question for everyone on the panel, let me pull it up. I just had it. Like what actions were the most significant for your campaign? Like, was there a turning point? Was there a single event that really galvanized people? And you know, what was that and how did you work through it?
Does he have your hands up?
Oh, you have your hands up. Go ahead.
I would say the action that got everything at the end was the company didn't want to sign. They were making it very difficult. So our contract was over by then. And
For Fontainebleau.
yeah, for Fontainebleau, our contract was over. So with everyone, all the employees knowing that the contract was over, everyone was pretty scared. What we did was rally a lot of people in front of HR and then demanded for like the directors and stuff to come. And then there was listening to a lot of people's different stories on why we need the contract and to agree on everything that we're asking for. And also around that time, we were also speaking on striking. And, you know, we were also telling them that we're gonna strike if they don't do something about it, because right now we don't have a contract. I would say, yeah, that was our big. Thank you.
Okay, so, Lisa, you want to go?
Yeah, I would say we had two, but mostly the second. The first was we had been coming off of the Omicron variant in the winter last year. And so people were all work from home. And then the first day back was the last day of the contract. This was really great for us because it was the first time in a very long time we all got to meet in person for the most part. And so we were able to utilize that to get everyone in the room. You could feel the anger and the tension. You could hear like the vocal members are much more vocal. Like you can feel that more when you're all together. That was very powerful. And then when we knew we were still bargaining late into the night, but when we knew that we had a good chance of going into a strike later, people stayed late, they made signs. There was a lot of camaraderie there, especially for a site where a lot of us were new. I had never met most of these people in person, and I was one of the bargaining team members. The second was we had a rally on that Friday. So we went on strike. Monday's the first day back. Tuesday through Friday, we're on strike. We planned a rally for Friday. And we picked out some speakers. Some were like me, I had been involved from the start, but some were people who on the picket line were just really vocal, really killing it, had great energy and were very passionate. And we were big on, picking up on those people who at first you might not realize are going to, shine that much, but they did. And so we had people like that speak, and we held this massive rally, and we kind of, I think, scared them off mostly because the head of the company kind of doesn't care about what we say about him, but we decided that we were going to picket in front of his boss's office. So we went to the next person over and we said that we were going to get buses and train trips to Boston. And we were kind of teasing this next escalation, and we were talking to more people. And I think that really scared them a lot, and it was really great. And it kind of echoed that first thing because everyone was in person feeling all of that, and it was so impactful. And they ended up we didn't reach an agreement that night. We were working through the night again until 1 a.m. or something, but over the weekend they kept calling us, and our bargaining person in charge basically. And so we ended up reaching an agreement that weekend before we even really came back for the weekend. So we didn't get to go to Boston, but that was absolutely pivotal.
That's awesome. And Colin and then Rose.
So I think the high watermark of our strike campaign was a march on the boss, where the chief nursing officer was attending he was virtually attending a meeting. Awkwardly, I was one of the leaders of the meeting, but I was also like a leader of the campaign. So, and like, so my personal experience of this was extremely complicated, but I'm not gonna like, this isn't the therapy couch. So I'm just gonna say from the vantage point of the union, that was the first opportunity that many of our members had to directly confront and reverse the power structure of the workplace. And basically, you know, like they weren't on the agenda. They went into this room that they weren't invited to and read a statement and just showed their numbers. And the people who, you know, like the person who read the statement was a leader who's like completely unflappable, like, you know, like it didn't really, like she didn't really galvanize her any more than she was already like ride or die. But like the people who were there, you know, who were, some of them were like, you know, 19-year-olds who were in college, who were, you know, working part-time, and some of them were like, there was a physician who was really respected for with like all the nurses, who was standing in solidarity with us. They all like, they talk about that like it was being in combat. Like they're like, my heart was racing, I was so scared, and yet we did it. We stood there and like we didn't run away, you know. And like on the other side of the aisle, like the administration freaked out. Like they were scared and upset. And like one of the people who was in the meeting, this woman who was in the meeting virtually, she was like watching as like a little black square at home. So she saw like people walk into a room through Zoom. Later during the meeting, started crying about it. And it was like, I was like, you know, and like the other people, some of the, it was like so controversial that people were like, I can't believe like this union stands for interrupting meetings. And I was like sitting there, I'm just like, do you guys know the history of the labor movement at all? Like, like it's not a nonviolent history. Like people have lost their lives, and you're like, we lost 5 minutes off the agenda, you know? So that was hilarious, but it was like, oh my God, it was so effective. And like they, like every person involved, like on the administration side, they're still like licking their wounds. They're like, oh, but what if we had, like, what if people interrupt this meeting we have in person? So I would just say like militant action, you know, I know like Janet McAlevey talks about structure tests. I feel like we also need to talk about like those structure tests as structure opportunities or whatever, you know, like it allows people to perceive the power of their solidarity and how intimidating it is to their boss in a way that totally transforms you. So like, and I have a feeling that that's, if we had gone on strike, that's what it would have been like multiplied by 10 or 20. And luckily, our administration is probably going to give us the opportunity to go on strike at some point. So we'll get to experience that. But like the oldies, I guess, like lessons learned, like oldies or goodies, like the march on the boss, like it's not new, right? And like Lisa, you had success with, I mean, it's like that confrontation of authority is just incredible. And then you will be surprised. That experience is transformative for people. And it like here, like I was like, there's this essay, like Rosa Luxemburg essay about the mass strike as a precursor to the Russian Revolution. And like one of her points is that like you experience like the experience of that collective power is something you can't just read about and be like, oh, okay, yeah, if we go on strike, it's gonna like scare the shit out of the boss and maybe like we'll just win. It's something that you have to experience firsthand, and there's no replacement for that experience. So whenever you're planning those actions, it's tough because it's like, well, you want it to be spicy, but you don't want it to be so spicy nobody will do it. And it was just the right moment at the right time. We did it in like 24 hours. So yeah. And I see Lisa's saying, yeah, the surprise leaders, the people who like show up and like turn into these like incredible, you know, they turn into Joe Hill, you know, it's like, okay, all right. This really quiet person is actually like, you know, a fighter, like, and will never stop being a fighter. So yeah, more direct action.
Rose, did you want to?
I think the two leaders already answered your questions.
Oh,
I can.
Alex, did you have a question?
Yeah, when did you know that you were going to win your prospective struggle? Like, was there a moment that you know that your strategies had paid off and that you felt the pressure break?
No. Okay, UniteHere will take that first question and
Well, I would say, you know, having to be part of a fight like that, you have to be having strategy meeting all the time, because it's not one thing gonna let you know you're gonna win, because it's a constant strategy and mobilization. You have to mobilize all the time, having conversation. After the strike vote, and because it's two different hotels and then two different strategy, because I would say Fontainebleau was most likely an internal fight, because it's most likely they cave in. And we have some external push from the international union on them, because they have a plan to build other hotels, you know, another part of the country that was so powerful there. But Diplomat was the hardest one. And then we were fighting with a bill, which is a really powerful, I would say, corporation, you know, been exist for over 150 years, or have billions of dollars. You know, it wasn't an easy. And Antoinette have to say, you know, every places in South Florida were open except Diplomat Hotel. They stay closed for 14 months because just want to break the union. That was the purpose of that. And then we were already on contract negotiations. We know things gonna be really pretty hard. We cannot be like, you know, take that, you know, easily to feel like we're gonna have a good contract for the workers. And then, and I will say for based off that, and changing strategy, because we have to talk to the union sisters and, you know, and borders. And then I will say we have the Broward Labor Democratic Party has a ball there. You know, we were lobby to talk to them, and we got elected official on that ball. You know, they were all of them support us. We have one leader who stood up, you know, talk about, you know, the fight, a personal story connected to the time he's been working at the Diplomat. And then they were all rally and promise they're gonna be in the picket line, you know, when we started, put pressure on the company. And we intense the pressure with, because we are our brothers and sisters from the pilot union, we're supposed to have 10 days, you know, convention there. They keep calling us to say, oh, they don't want to, you know, they don't want to go cross the picket line. Send a letter to the company to tell them that if they have to come, that issue has to be resolved. And the company never make any move, and they cancel that event. It was $6 million or $70 million they lost. And the company felt like, you know, we got, you know, we got the power, you know, to destroy them. And in the same moment, you know, we had starting to have picket lines, you know, at 7 in the morning with different groups. We're starting, you know, leaflet customers, you know, to talk about the hotels. And I would say is a like actions, you know, so many actions happening at the same times, you know, make it feel like, you know, we don't see any way, you know, the company, you know, is gonna come. And I remember it was Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, the workers AM were leafleting. And the GM at that time never be at the hotel on the Sunday morning, and that time he has to show up. And then when he showed up, and the lawyer have to call the principal officer of the local to say, oh, you know, what you are doing, you feel like, you know, they're so scared, you know, and they want the fight to be over. And on the next day, they called to have contract negotiations. You know, we were like, you know, really far apart on that contract negotiation. So remember, Antoinette, I'm talking about for Diplomat, I was like, you know, in it. And then they don't want to leave the room until we settle. And before that, Fontainebleau cave in before, that's why my sister Lizzie want to explain And then when the company cave in before, because they watch what's going on at the diplomat, they don't want that to happen to them. And then they cave in and they say, okay, you guys, you have the contract you won, but after that, they don't want to sign. You know, they said, oh, they don't want to sign. And the workers, the committees there with included Lizzie went and the cafeteria and the place that they have negotiations, and they saw the workers making sign, you know, to go to say they're gonna be on strike, you know, they're gonna walk out. And then the whole hotel, you know, people have been talking to people, they're ready to walk out, and the company freaked out and they called, they want to be settled on the next day.
Okay, so I did see that Sana left a question in the chat that is specific to UniteHere, but I think let's have Lisa Marie and Colin answer the question first, and then we'll come back to that. So Lisa, if you want to go.
Yeah, so I think that echoing what I think it was Rose was saying.
So sorry. I totally forgot to turn our volume back up. Start again. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I think it was Rose that was just speaking who I was talking about always checking in. And so I don't know if there was a specific moment where I knew for sure. I mean, because I was constantly, and not I, we really, were constantly checking. And for us, that meant we had a spreadsheet. I definitely this is a me personal thing, data and spreadsheets. And so I was constantly tracking. We had our entire member list and we had a scale of 0 to 5. 0 was, we have no idea. That means we got to find out. 1 means they're going to vote no. There's no way they're going to strike. 5 is like, they're either on the bargaining team. We know that they would be a leader. They're a rep of some kind. 3 is like in the middle. They might vote yes, no, you get the idea. So we constantly had that. And we also constantly, I even made a pie chart that linked up to all of these. So I constantly, every single day, knew how many people do we know where they're at and how many people do we think are going to vote yes? How many people are really on board? How many people are skeptical? How many people are 3s? Like they're kind of in the middle. Are we changing any 3s to 4s? Things like that. Every single day I knew that. So I don't know if it's one moment or like just seeing the cascade of, as we get more responses, we're seeing more and more support. People are getting energized. The only time I think maybe I would know for sure is when we did the strike pledge and strike authorization, where our strike pledge was very, very high and our strike authorization was 100% yes, with only a few people that did not vote. I think some of those maybe would have voted no. I realistically, I think there were a couple people that maybe would have, but just didn't want to vote for whatever reason. And so just knowing that we had those numbers and constantly seeing them meant that like I was pretty confident before those votes even happened, but that kind of sealed the deal, if that makes sense. But knowing before I even went to a vote is truly the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Thank you so much.
But Zaina,
Okay, so Zaina had asked a question in the chat. It's directed to UniteHere. So I'll ask that question first, and then Yuri can ask their question. So Zaina said, one question for the Union Sisters in Miami. How did you convince your coworkers who were afraid of losing their job to push through to get to the union strike ready? And how often did you all have these strategy meetings to check in about your progress?
Yes, because that time is not easy, but we call them and we visit them. I'm working in the floor, I check them in the floor, and when they have like lady check out, I treat them how they leave them after your 8 hours. Don't stay. If you have stuff to put in the room, put it. If you don't have, don't looking for that. And to make that the manager like start to scare, to make people like you have to take care of yourself. Don't take care of your company, your job every time because they don't care for you. Now you have to care for your body. And now we do the sick day to make sure people have pain, like lot of stuff we do. And yes, a lot of people scared to do it. But, and I tell them, we already lose the job before. And now we have to fight to get something better because like everything coming up in Florida, how, because you're working hard, they have to pay you, you have to get your insurance. That's why we push people, we talk to people, like sometimes they need my help, I give them help, I visit them, and to make sure people, everybody like stay together, we get that.
You want to add something?
Well, for me, one of my strategies that I used was keeping them informed about what was going on in the negotiation room, because I felt like really if all of them got a chance to be at the table to hear how the company really felt about them, they would probably feel the same way that I feel. So I was making sure that I informed them about everything that the company was saying, and like, you know, doing house visits, even phone calls and stuff during break, going to sit and talk to them and explaining to them, you know, what the company said and what the company wants to offer to us and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can add something. Well, I think is I think, you know, it is pretty clear if, you know, like Antoinette keeps saying that, you know, the company keep the diplomat, the company kept the place closed for 14 months. They didn't care. That means you didn't have a job, you know, for 14 months. You know why now, if you go on strike, you know what you have to lose, you know, because they put you, they force you to strike before. They force you, you know, to lose your job before, what you have to lose of that. And also, like Lizzie just add, you know, we don't have one conversation with people. We have plenty of conversation with people. And then we have training opportunity, like Antoinette said, you know, the training opportunities just, we have what we call a training to tell people, you know, as to do a housekeeping job, you know, you have to clean 14 rooms, you know, and then which part of your body is killing you. We got the training in front of everybody for people to identify the pain, you know, to do that. And then it's a part to really agitate people. And also Antoinette talk about, you know, how, you know, you're not finish the room, you don't have to kill yourself. It's in your contract. You know, people start training, you start training, not me, you know, the leaders, you know, the committee, they start training their groups, you know, in order to push them, to agitate them, to keep them motivated every all the time. And also the communication that Lizzie talking about, you keep them informed all the time, because the boss, that's what they do for a living, try to go under the workers, you know, and one of your boss said, why they have to pay you more money just to cutting on ladies, you know, so disrespectful. And then the workers have to know that, the followers have to know that this is the way you can keep agitating people to make them mad, to feel like you have to choose between your anger, you're hiding your anger, or you know, you feel like, you know, oh, I'm gonna take the way it is, I'm gonna keep it the way it is. Yeah.
We have a question from Yuri. Come on over.
So basically I was at bargaining a few days ago, or weeks ago, and our director basically had said that in terms of actions for our bargaining, that you know, we should probably start off with just having stickers of saying I support the bargaining team and stuff like that. And even though there were some ideas thrown about there, it kind of seems like we don't have very much faith in our workers to show up and organize. And it doesn't seem like there's very much militancy, not only just in the union, and especially amongst our workers, specifically with the fact that we only have 50% unionized. So my question is, how can I help to be able to aid the union and the workers to agitate as much as possible, so that if I suggest maybe on this particular bargaining day, we go out and start interrupting the meetings and start yelling signs to say, give us 12%, that we can actually get the people to do that, and not, hey, we're doing that and it's only me.
Lisa?
I would say, I think the thing about building militancy is that it doesn't just happen abruptly. And so when we say escalation, we need a place to escalate from. And so the buttons do feel underwhelming compared to what we're talking about, but that's step one, right? You can't burn out on your biggest thing right away, because then if you play your biggest card first and it doesn't work, then where do you go from there? And that's really, really hard to do. And you don't want to do something that down the road will put you in a bad spot. And so doing things like the buttons can be a safer thing to get, especially more lukewarm people to do. And so what you can do is make sure everyone has them, first of all, make it easy for them to get them, just logistically. And then everyone who's like that 50%, use that 50%. That 50% then goes talk to the other 50% and says, hey, I've got a button. You want to wear one with me? And like now it's someone else already doing it, right? And a button is a lot easier to convince someone to do if they're borderline than interrupting a meeting, right? And so that's also why escalation is so important. You have to get that buy-in for the little things before you can try and get them to do the big things. And also like those things, like management notices. When we left for strike, I just had like some like on strike signs like at my desk, and someone like ripped them off. Like you'd be shocked at how much people do care about those things, so I get the frustration. I absolutely get like, let's do this, let's get what we want, but it's a process, and like it's also made up of those really tedious small steps, and getting that buy-in in those small steps is really, really crucial to get buy-in for bigger steps. So I would definitely say, try and embrace the buttons and the stickers and use that, that 50%, don't look at it as 50% that's not on board. Look at it as we already have 50%. That's a 1-to-1 ratio of every single person can have one person that they ask to wear a button or sticker with them. And then you go from there. So build it up, utilize that, build on it.
All right, and Colin?
Yeah, everything Lisa said, thumbs up times a million. Yeah, we marched on the boss like 3 years into a campaign, and 6 months into a strike pledge campaign, and following buttons and stickers and stuff like that, visibility things. What I would say on top, the only thing I would add to that, and this is something that I'm continuing to work on, but I think that, so I don't want to make assumptions, but like there's a difference between there's something special. There's a special sauce that someone brings to a organizing campaign if they have a socialist vision. Like they have a bigger political vision of how their struggle fits into a national and international scene, right? Like, so not everybody has that. And so one of the things that I'm constantly trying to do, and that I think you can do, anybody can do, is, and I'm not saying like, whoa, you should sell a newspaper. Like, I'm saying like, you may not be able to get people to get to like your exact vision, but like if you just educate people by sharing what's been going on in your meetings in other, like in labor across the country, like that can be revolutionary. So like one of the things that we did is we had nurses come from a unit that had gone on strike, and of course they ended up both like being part of like the organized left, which emerged like through conversations over the course of like months, but like having people talk, like showing people that striking, like showing people what's on the table and what other people are doing, and just trying to like elevate their awareness of the fact that like there are unions like all across the country that are doing this stuff all the time. I think just like expands the realm of what's possible in your coworkers' heads, and starts to like make things that maybe used to seem like something they would never ever do in a million years, something that they maybe ought to do. And to that end, also, like if there are opportunities for solidarity actions in your community, like showing people that labor is a community, and that if they're about to do something that like is really risky, that there's a community of labor organizers in most cities and most of the country, who will have your back. And that itself is like really transformative and exciting. So like when we were leading up to our strike, and this is pretty common, right? But we were doing tons of outreach. And like, you know, when the Teamsters say like, yeah, we're not going to drop off the dirty laundry and pick it up from the hospital if you have a picket line. And the building trades are like, yeah, you have these like, all the hospital seems to care about is like the new buildings it's building. Yeah, well, we're not going to work on those projects if there's a picket line. We had a solidarity fund, or a solidarity hardship fund, and like people across the country donated to it, you know. And that's like, that isn't like something that you have to do. Like, it's not like wearing a sticker, but it's like, you're just showing people like, hey, like if they're talking, if you manage to get them to come to the labor temple or like the whatever labor like building it is, sometime for an event, and they talk to somebody else who's like, yeah, I'm in a union, I'm here because I've got your back. That's pretty cool. And Dripped Out Trade Unionists posted a picture of us. That was, you know, that never hurts. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know how that answers your question.
I see a question from Julio. Come on up.
Sort of like so far.
Hello, everybody. This one's more for Colin, but advice from anyone is appreciated. What would you say to someone who is looking to organize their hospital, but is kind of intimidated by the amount of different units that you never really get to see? That, you know, there's different shifts and there's just so many departments you don't know the needs of, wants of, and you're on your floor for 12 hours. So where do you find the leeway to kind of feel out?
Well, I would say call me. And we'll talk. But I think a lot of workplaces are like that. And not everybody, you don't have to be like quite as committed as I am. Like I feel like the last 6 months, I've been every single break I have at work, I just wander around the hospital and talk to people. But you don't have to like, so shift change is a great place to do that. You just like, once you start, it's like a snowball effect, you know, like you get someone in this unit and it turns out that they're like, they've been waiting their entire career for someone to ask them if they wanted to have a union, you know, and then you get that organizing committee. So you map your unit, you develop that organizing committee, and the leaders start coming. We're doing the same thing right now, and this is also secret. We're doing the same thing with our service and support. And we have like an adjacent employer called the UW Medical Foundation. And it's just like, yeah, dietary is too scared to talk to us right now. We're reaching out through multiple areas, and hopefully they will. In like EVS, finally, we got the housekeeping on board, and lab techs. They're like scared of nurses because they call them and tell them bad news all the time. And it's like, no, we all got each other's backs. So I would say, call me, and I can put my number in the chat. But like, if you're the person you're describing is you, if it's not you, you know, I'm also happy to talk to you. But like, anybody who's in that situation wants to talk about organizing in a hospital, talk to me and I can hook you up. There's like a labor notes working group that focuses on healthcare, and that's an incredible resource. And I bounce questions off of them all the time. It's like, hey, you know, anybody organizing with this type of job or this, you know, like, so there's a lot, and there's a lot of wall-to-wall unions out there. So I'll put my number in the chat.
We have questions constantly, so don't, you know, you're gonna get so many calls from Miami DSA. I'm just kidding. I think that was a popular question, so I think we'll take Rose and then Lisa Marie.
I've never worked at a hospital, so I can't really say, you know, too much, but I would say that's why, you know, having leaders is very important, especially in different shifts, and like doing house visits, you know, a lot of house visits, and doing even on the phone, doing phone calls to talk to people. But yeah, having different leaders and different that works different shifts and different departments that can communicate, you know, the information that you're trying to get out there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to know, I think you guys sounded a little low again on that side.
But you can just.
What I said was having leaders in different outlets that works different shifts. Yeah, and doing house visits and phone calls to talk with workers that you can't meet in person. Yeah, that's
Awesome, thank you. Lisa Marie?
Yeah, so also have not worked in a hospital, but we do have multiple sites, like I said, and you would think that we were all very connected, but we're very much not. And we tend to be very siloed, right? And sometimes even though we're in the same office, we're all very focused on just our thing. And sometimes bridging that gap feels socially a lot harder than it really is. One great piece of advice I heard recently was to go to the people who are social butterflies, right? Because those people are always organizing, but they don't realize it, right? They are already forming networks. So go to the person who always knows, like, oh, it's this nurse's birthday, it's this person in accounting's birthday, it's this secretary's birthday. Like, those people are so, so great to have on your side because they know everyone. And even if they don't know them, they know someone else who knows them or works with them. You know, there's always people who talk, and like, not in a bad way. Those people are amazing to tap, just to like try and be like, hey, we haven't talked to anyone in radiology. You know, do you know anyone that you could talk to, just to like even set up a chat with me really quick? Amazing. And those people are excellent. Just wanted to point that out there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Rose, and she's paying attention. Like, where did you get your training or your orientation for organizing? What's the school that taught you how to organize the way that you do?
Hold on, did you guys hear that over the Zoom call? No, Gabe, one more time, please.
Yeah, I was asking Rose, what is the school like? Where did you get your training, and like, where did you learn how to organize essentially?
That's a personal question to me or to UniteHere in general?
Yeah, like the philosophy, like where do you guys get your tactics and stuff, like, you know?
It's a little bit hard to answer that question. I'm just kidding. I've been with UniteHere for 17 years, and then UniteHere, if I am wrong, some people here can correct me, and I think we've been existing for over 100 years, right? That organizations, that labor union, and we always be on the setting of classroom, you know, training. We believe on training. We believe on one-on-one conversation with people. We believe on having, you know, weekly meeting with people, you know, with the workers, and to talk about their personal life and to talk about what's going on in their life, not only specifically about the workplace, right? We try to do deep organizing because our goal is not only to just change people's life and the workplace, but is to change people's life in general, right? Because we want really to train the leaders to become us, right? Because we feel like the world cannot change, you know, with the small group that we are, you know, and that's the philosophy of UniteHere. We're always looking for opportunity to train more people to become organizers, to become leaders, to become, you know, to become the president of the local, to be the locals, you know, to become the sky will be your limits by training, having to train by UniteHere. That's the philosophy of that. Meaning when we talk about your issue at work, but it's not only issue at work related. We talk about immigration issue with folks. We talk about personal issue, you know, violence in the houses, you know, inequality at work, you know, anything you can think is a taboo, is an injustice in the society, we talk with folks about it. I don't know if I answer your question, and those ladies probably can add anything. Right? Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
I think we're gonna close tag here. There I'm sure are a million questions still. So I think we could talk about doing a on strike part 2 at a different time, but we want to be respectful of our panelists who took the time to be here with us for an hour and a half almost. So I think Morgan asked, it might have been Brian, but this looks like Morgan's writing, asked a really great question on the chat that I think will be a good place for us to close ad. The question is, did any of you work with and or get approached by outside organizers, for example, DSA members? And if so, what was helpful and what was a hindrance?
We're often more hindrances than help.
Okay, go for it, Colin.
Hard to know how to approach this question as someone who would be like, I don't know. It's not like I'm a civilian, but like, as our campaign got more and more visibility, so our DSA labor working group in Madison reached out to us, but like I'm friends with them. So I actually don't even know if I reached out to them first. And now I'm the co-chair of the DSA labor working group in Madison. So it's like, I don't know if that's a good example, but Socialist Alternative was really invested in supporting us. Then they got sort of caught up into the Roe versus Wade national campaign they were doing, which is super important work. I mean, I don't know. Like, you know, when you come to if you come to a meeting and you have a newspaper, like I will buy a copy and have a conversation with you about it. But like, I don't know if it's the best organizing strategy. If you come to a meeting and say, if you're like, so the difference between the labor working group and Socialist Alternative, and I'm not like casting aspersion on Socialist Alternative. This is just like one example. Like if you come to a public meeting that we're having and you're just trying to like have conversations that like push people to say like get them to that systemic perspective, like, well, why do you think your boss isn't like recognizing your union? And it's like, because they own the means of production and we should seize them, you know? And it's like, okay, well, not everybody has to get there or like have that perspective to be part of the union, or indeed to like be part of a collective like organized labor project. So it's like, I feel like maybe that's like going a little too fast, or like it does weird people out. What the labor working group has done and what our strategy is going forward, and I'm sure you guys do similar things, is like we do sort of we sometimes do public facing things, and sometimes we do like more like inward facing, like, hey, we see that you have like there's like a new campaign at like a cafe in Madison right now, and we invited workers from that campaign to come talk to us, and like the people who come in our group have like these big networks and a lot of experience. And we don't say like you have to join DSA or buy into a vision. We're just like, tell us about your situation. And 9 times out of 10, people in the room at the labor working group have questions that union, because they're so focused on their particular campaign, it just hasn't thought of, you know. And sometimes that's because you're an outside organizer, but it's also because you're just like, you know, your stuff, and you're a labor nerd, and you have a lot to offer in the form of like background. So I would say like focus on the campaign needs. Like what do those work when you're asking yourself, okay, is this intervention as an organization a good idea in this campaign? Ask yourself, like, is it going to help the workers win their campaign more than is it going to like expand our organization and like accomplish this national or international goal?
And Lisa, did you want to add to that?
No, that was just my mistake, but thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll just close it out here and say thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for those on Zoom as well. We're gonna take a group picture with you guys on Zoom. So just stay for like 1 second, but round of applause. Thank you for all the panelists here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Lisa. And why don't we all get next to the Zoom screen for a group picture? Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for doing this. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Colin. Thanks, Lisa. Bye, y'all.